Welcome to the Modern Neanderthal Podcast. This is episode 1, Imported Knives. My name is Nick, and my co-host is Austin. You can find me at the Modern Neanderthal on Instagram. You can find me at modneanderthal.com. And Austin?
If you want to follow me, you can follow me on Instagram under Epic Snuggle Bunny or on YouTube also under Epic Snuggle Bunny.
All right, so today we're going to be discussing, first off, what we've been carrying this week. Then we'll get into our main topic, and then Then at the end of the podcast, we will go over the gear challenge section. So stay tuned for that. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into what we've been carrying this week. Austin, what you been carrying?
Well, do we want to jump into the challenge report, because that was my carry for this week?
Sure, why not?
All right, so we'll just touch on it briefly, I suppose. But
Yeah.
we did a challenge to carry your least expensive knife for a week. So the Kershaw CQC7K was essentially in my pocket for the entire week. I did have a cheat day, but
Of course.
yeah. So the CQC7K watches, it varied. I've been infatuated with my new Citizen signature, as well as my Lou and Huey Orthos with the red dials. So I carried those. Pen-wise, alternated between the ZT, what is it, like 110 BLK, which is that new ZT tactical pen, and then
Yeah.
wallet, always the Joyeria Fiorentina, and
Say that again.
Joyeria Fiorentina. That
That's
means like Florence leather. It's an Italian wallet.
Yeah. That's pretty good pronunciation.
Well, I still speak some Italian, so
Oh, really?
yeah. I used to be fluent at one time, but
Oh,
anyhow.
wow.
I guess that's pretty much it. So yeah, just those things, and yeah, that's my primary carry for this week. So it was jeans most of the time, except for my cheat day. I had a meeting at the hospital, and I wasn't sure, kind of, if that was
Yeah.
going to be a problem. So I went for my my ZT0562, since it's a deep carry pocket clip.
Right.
And it doesn't show anything but the clips. So that was the only reason that I switched it up for that day. It's, I had a meeting. I wasn't sure about the individuals. I'd never been in that environment before.
Right.
Wasn't sure if I needed to check in with security or any of that stuff. So I just went as discreet as possible. But it really was a non-issue. So I could have stuck with the CQC7K. But when you're unsure, it's, those are the types of things that we as gear addicts have to be mindful of sometimes. So
Yeah, I can understand that. Do you run into any problems a lot in your state?
no, Utah is super friendly to
Yeah.
pretty much just about any knife you want to carry. And then I have a concealed carry permit, so I think I can do just about anything I want.
Sounds about right. I am thoroughly jealous. I'll just go ahead and go into mine. So for the week, part of the week, I did carry my cheap knife challenge knife, which was the K-Bar Dozier Folding Hunter, I believe is what it's called. It's a hunter green handle with the black blade. It's not a terrible knife, but when you're used to, flippers and frame locks and going down to something like that, and not to talk down to the knife again, because it's for about $20, that's a pretty great deal for that, for a good knife. AUS 8 steel, it takes a great edge, holds it, very well. The lockup on it was super tight, hardly any wiggle in any direction. Side to side especially was really good, which is surprising for a knife that's, FR in handles and a backlock. Surprisingly stable and sturdy. Really I had no problems with it, but that gear addict in me got yearning for something pretty hard after about 3 days. So I switched it up to switched it between my Sebenza 21 in Singo and my Shirogorov, my Tabargan. I think that's how you say it. Something
Wow.
like that. Tabargan.
Yeah.
So I went from one extreme to the other pretty quick. But I wear slacks to work, so I don't have any. I can usually carry just about anything. We're in Maryland, which the state is what it is.
Hmm.
The Maryland's got a weird setup in that the center where Annapolis and like Baltimore is really, for lack of a better word, liberal, and the surrounding districts out west, Southern Maryland, the Eastern Shore, where I am, is super conservative. So it's like one end to the other. So while the state is not that friendly, my local jurisdiction is. I mean, if they stop people for carrying knives here, they'd be stopping literally every single person that's walking around. Granted, they're not all carrying anything usually but Gerbers, but
Oh,
yeah, which hey, we can talk about those later in the main topic. But
yeah.
so I have no problem carrying usually what I want to carry. As far as what else I've been carrying, I got a new watch. It's a Citizen Ecosphere. I kind of was drawn to it because it's got this like orange accent.
Mm.
Which orange and black are the Orioles colors, and we're big Orioles fans out here. So it's a really nice watch. It's a chronograph. It's actually the first Citizen I've owned, but I really like it. So
Nice.
I also carried the Prometheus Beta QR version 2, which is one of my favorite little pocket lights. It's got a great beam. It's the AAA battery format, and a flashlight is my favorite because it's not too long that, if you sit down, it gets pokey.
Hmm.
And I carry it in my front right pocket, same as my knife pocket, but I carry it on the left side. So I carry it scooted all the way to the left. And it actually, if you get one that's just a AAA, it's small enough that it actually will stay there and hold there fairly well in jeans. With slacks, the pockets are usually up and down practically, so you can't do that. So I carry it in my back pockets, but I always carry a flashlight with me because I find that I use that quite a bit. The other thing I carried was a Casey Lynch pry bar. It's a great little pry bar. It's really thin, really light. It's made of titanium. It's anodized, kind of a nice blue fade. It's a bottle opener, pry bar, but it has a pocket clip on it, which is really nice because you can clip it to your pocket, and it practically disappears. It's a really nice little piece of gear. He also makes tie scales too, or at least he did. I think he's kind of getting out of it now, but that's a great little tool. Other than that, that's pretty much what I've been carrying, other than my phone and an occasional pen. I'll carry a pen from time to time, but I'm not always consistent with it. So
Okay. Cool.
so that's really what I've been carrying this week. So I guess we'll segue right into our main topic for the week, which is imported knives. So there's a lot of pros and cons that go into imported knives. Also a lot of stigma, a lot of politics, but hopefully we can kind of discuss some of that. So some of the pros that I see or traditionally see are traditionally an imported knife, and more specifically like a Chinese knife, you're talking about a budget knife. You're talking about something that's going to hit a price point, okay?
Hmm.
If Kershaw needs to manufacture a knife to a price point, they go to their Chinese manufacturing. But lately, we've been seeing a lot of knives that are not necessarily built to a price, but are, of a higher end and more affordable than maybe what had been normally thought of in those categories. That might be changing a little bit, as things kind of progress and as their passion kind of drives the designs. What do you think? Any thoughts?
Well, looking back, at least potentially over the last 10 years, I mean, I think China has been kind of that, very budget specific, quality is very inconsistent type of knives. And, as you mentioned, within the last, I think, 2 years here, we've definitely seen, a rise in quality manufacturing, unique offerings, companies with good reputations. So a lot of people are, I guess, hesitant or kind of not potentially ready for that market of knives, but there's also been a lot of people who've definitely jumped on board, and I certainly being one of them. I've reviewed knives from Kaiser Riate. We could talk about Custom Knife Factory a little bit.
Hmm.
I just ordered a knife from Reich Knives, which is a newer company.
Right.
So that one should be here at some point. I got AliExpress for the first time, which was an interesting experience. So, yeah,
Really?
yeah, I'd never done that before. So, but
Now, AliExpress, do you know where they're based out of? Like when you order a knife from them, where do they ship
I
from?
think
Do you
it's
know?
more of kind of like an Amazon type website. Essentially, you have separate dealers and sellers, and AliExpress is just the website that brings all those sellers to a common place. And so when you order,
Okay.
you're actually, there might be the same knife being sold by different vendors, and those different vendors have ratings. So you can choose a different vendor and essentially go from them. So it's probably going to be, I think most of the sellers are primarily going to be based in China. So it could be
Mm-hmm.
anywhere kind of within China, essentially.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, I know of AliExpress. I've never ordered from
Hmm.
them, but I've been on there several times to take a look at different things. I've seen a lot of your reviews on the Riates, and they get really good feedback from most of the knife
Hmm.
community. I can't say that there's any much bad to be said that's not politically driven.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother that's a whole nother can of worms. You talk about the politics involved with it, and Chinese versus USA, and I just as much as anybody else want to support USA
Hmm.
manufacturing, but if a design is good and the price is good, they're going to sell, no matter what country they're based out of. And I'm not closed-minded to the fact that you can have a quality product from an overseas
Hmm.
manufacturer. If you think about what's different between a Horizon knife from Riate, and say a similar knife like the Spyderco Sleece Bowie. It's made in Taiwan. They're two different
Hmm.
countries, but they're both imported knives. What makes one you know different than the other in terms of like um, just sheer I don't even know what you want to call that, but you know the Sleece Bowie isn't looked down on for being an imported knife. It just is what it
Hmm.
is. This is where it's from, and it's a great knife. People know that, and I think that more and more companies like Riate are kind of changing the tune that this is a great knife. It happens to be from China, but that doesn't matter because it's a great
Yeah.
knife.
And Spyderco is somewhat of an anomaly within kind of this
Mm,
discussion because some of their knives, primarily they used to be produced in seems like in Japan. Now a lot of their really nice stuff is coming out of Taichung, Taiwan with the
right,
manufacturer there, and then they do have some obviously from the Golden Factory, which is currently in expansion, but they're
right,
kind of a conglomerate of those different companies, China, Japan, USA made. Oh, and then they have the budget offerings specifically from Japan, not including the high-end offerings from Taiwan,
right.
which is, they don't see themselves as China. So,
Yeah,
they're an interesting company, but they are based in Golden, Colorado. You can call and potentially talk to someone. You're more than likely going to leave a message and hope to hear back. But so I think there is that confidence
yeah,
inspiring. That it is a U.S. company. You
yeah.
can call someone there. Whereas like with Riate or Kaiser, even though they produce really high quality products, it's like, okay, if I need help, there may or may not be a language barrier. There's not necessarily a
Right.
number that I can call. I have to send an email, and it's just a little more, I guess, cloak and dagger for the process.
Yeah, yeah. I'm with that, and I think that is a reason for a lot of the stigma. Um, if you're going to be paying close to $300 for some of these models and
Hmm.
up, at some point, they you're going to expect a certain level of service. If you buy a Chris Reeve or a Strider, one of the main things that originally made people buy those knives was the company and the warranty. Back in the day when there were no knives out except for those two that were that expensive, unless you were talking about a custom, the reason that you paid that much money for the knife is because the company stood behind it and you knew they were going to take care of you if something happened. You know, you were going to have that knife for a long time, and if you had some trouble, you knew you could count on them to send it back. Now, I'm not going to get into the warranties of each
Hmm.
company because we all have different opinions on how those are actually handled, but that's that's what they were known
Yeah.
for. And I certainly understand that these companies that don't have a U.S. face. I mean, I personally have trouble. I haven't bought any any Riate's knives. I've liked a lot of them. The Horizon C looked really nice. I really was attracted to that
Hmm.
design. A lot of them. The District 9 flipper wasn't really attractive to me. That one was kind of
Hmm.
fugly, but a lot of the models are really nice. But I just have a hard time pulling the trigger on those when I could buy a ZT for around the same price, and I can go to the store and handle one and order from a company that I know the warranty is good. I know they're going to stand behind me. They're right here. It only takes a few days, shipping if I do have a problem. Um, so it does certainly factor in, having a U.S. face.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's
you
interesting. It
know,
seems like as of late, looking at some of the discussions, about the different Chinese companies, specifically with Riate and their newest model, kind of hitting the $400 price point. It seems like consumers or knife enthusiasts are a lot more price conscious than they want to talk about.
oh
And
yeah,
so, when you've got the US variants versus the Chinese variants, a lot of people were willing to jump on board because it was such a good deal. You got all these premium materials for this price, and they're willing to take that risk. Now that the price goes up, all of a sudden, um, you know, they're not interested in the knives anymore, despite previous models they bought. So it's an interesting look at it, but that certainly
right.
was one of the drawing factors for I think a lot of people was the prices were good. Some of the designs are new and innovative. Some of the features are new. And that's the reason that I've bought so many of these knives made in China, be it Kaiser, Riate, the new Reich knife. Is I like new and exciting
Hmm.
things. I'm more of a risky consumer than others, and
Early
yeah,
adopter.
early adopter, and it's cost me some more money than others, like the Horizon A.
Yeah,
That was 250 at U.S. dealers. I paid 320 for it because I bought it when I
right.
first saw it. I was like, that looks neat. I want to try that. So, and then they went on sale for 250, and I was like, well, crap. you know,
Yeah,
I wasn't
yeah,
anticipating
yeah.
that,
Well,
but it's one that I still have, and I don't want to sell it, so I really don't care at this point. What I paid for it. So,
yeah.
but
Yeah, that's a good point. If for me, I'm the same way. If it's a knife that I really like and really enjoy and will keep, it's the cost is almost
mhm,
secondary. But I hear you on that. Like when I went and I purchased the Deboya, which was the Kevin John
yeah,
one, like the first original design Kevin John knife. Um, but people went kind of crazy for those things. I mean, when they first showed off those pictures, I mean, it was a
yeah,
fever around those knives, and it's funny because those same people, I guarantee, swaths of people that were condemning Kevin John for making clones, went out and bought that knife, and I could see the appeal. I mean, I certainly don't agree with buying clones of knives. It's just not a good thing to do. It's not a good thing for the industry.
hmm,
People keep
yeah,
buying them, which doesn't help. This is a market driven. Uh, it's basic market economics. If people are gonna buy something, people are gonna
hmm,
make it. But that the Deboya was like insanely packed with features. I mean, it had machined carbon fiber on top of machined titanium, with tritium inserts, ceramic bearing system that was like fantastically smooth. It was like the fastest, smoothest flipper I've ever owned, still to this day. And it was a Chinese manufactured knife from Kevin John, and that company just, I mean, I think that their manufacturing is any of the clones that I've heard of, people owning. I've not owned one, but they get like extremely high praise for their
hmm,
machining. So it makes perfect sense. Why make a clone of a knife that's $50 when you can make an original design that doesn't cost that much more for you to produce and sell the damn thing for
yeah,
$200?
and it might even be less expensive. I mean, reverse manufacturing is not an easy process necessarily.
Right.
So
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know, but I don't reverse manufacture. I could be wrong. So,
Well, no. I mean, it makes sense. You got to dedicate somebody to take the thing apart and take measurements, and it's not a good thing to do. I mean, but and I think that for me personally, that's where a lot of my issue with Chinese manufacturing comes. The copyright laws over there are very, very, very loose. I mean, there's essentially nothing that you can do to keep a Chinese company from essentially stealing your design. there's no patent, patents hold no weight
Hmm.
there, copyrights hold no weight. They can go in and make whatever they want. So I think that's probably a lot of it's like an ethical dilemma. You don't want to support companies that will do that. But people went out and bought those Deboya knives like crazy, and they were really fantastic.
Hmm.
And it honestly makes me think. I've thought several times without any evidence at all that you know, is Kevin John manufacturing for other companies, manufacturing parts and machining parts and then sending them out to other companies to hand finish.
Yeah.
It's a thought that's popped into my head more than once.
And there are companies that do utilize Chinese manufacturing. There are other companies who people suspect that they utilize Chinese manufacturing. And so, there's a lot of things that are kind of unsaid or not put out in the marketplace, even within an industry as small as the knife community. And, there are people that know, but, drama, who,
Yeah.
a lot of people just aren't really interested in causing those problems, aside from people on the forums, but the people on the forums generally are not the people in the know to bring that information forward anyway. So,
Right. Well, and one example of a company that we do know has openly stated that they do this is Custom Knife
mhm.
Factory. It's well known that they machine, they get their machining done in China and then they do the hand finishing. And I can tell you, I've seen a couple of their grinds, like the grind on the, I think it was the Decepticon. It's either the one or the two. I forget which one, but it looked very similar to the lines that were on the Deboya on the
Hmm.
blade. And I'm not saying that they do it, that Kevin John is doing it, but Kevin John has the manufacturing. I don't doubt for a second that if I ordered, you know, 100, 200, 300 knives from, knife parts from Kevin John, that they wouldn't work that well because they have the manufacturing,
Yeah,
they have the
yeah. I
machining.
mean, the Deboya was fantastic in terms of fit and finish. I reviewed that one. Um, yeah, I mean, it was a great knife. I mean, aside from, the Deboya was a limited run for Custom Knife Factory, in fact. So, I mean, we do know
Right.
that they have somewhat of a relationship already with Kevin John.
Yeah.
But that version sold out, like you mentioned. It went really fast. I even saw some of them going for like $300 on resale. Like they actually saw a price increase, which was
Yeah,
which
I
was
might be guilty of that.
it was odd, because I mean, yeah, it's a great knife, lots of features, well packed, but for production knives to go up in value, I mean, especially a Chinese
Yeah. When does
production
that
knife, I
happen?
mean, I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. Um, that would
Trust me,
happen.
I was just as shocked too. I mean, because like you said, that never happens. I mean, it happens with limited. I mean, I guess you could technically call it a limited because you can buy it now, but it has that ugly billboard plastered all over the blade.
Oh yeah, you're talking about the Venom 2 that Kevin John makes and
Yeah,
sells probably through
yeah,
AliExpress.
I think
Yeah.
so. So you can technically buy it, from them, but just that small change. But yeah, the DLC coded one and the plain blade one went so fast. They don't, as far as I know, you can't get them anymore. Haven't been able to get them since that first
Yeah.
run. I'm guilty of it. I mean, I sold mine and made a made a good 160 $180
Wow.
on it. Yeah, which is almost doubling my money on a Chinese produced knife. Which I honestly just bought it out of curiosity just to test, just to see how the machining held
Hmm.
up. Um, and it was good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, great knife. I think it's really easy to tell when a knife is well made. The only thing that people are hesitant about typically is the materials that are used. Um,
hmm
and it's kind of funny because if the knife functions, it cuts well, it performs well, does everything you expect it to, but then you're unhappy because, and you have to take American knife company's word for it too. I mean, unless you are a
yeah.
metallurgist and you want to start chipping off pieces and analyzing it, I mean, you have to take someone's word for it. But I get it with the Chinese companies. They're claiming to use a lot of the CPM steel, and
Mhm.
on the forums, actually, some of the people on the forums have contacted reps from various steel distributors and the company themselves, and they verify that they actually do purchase, CPM S35VN and other steels. So I mean, it's already been proven to an extent, but does that mean that every single company utilizes those
Right.
materials specifically, or you won't know until
Yeah.
you really hard use the knife and sit down, do a very well laid out comparison performance wise. So
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things there. I agree. So you do have to kind of take somebody's word for it, but I think that the American market would be much more, um, you know, fastidious to track down a company. I mean, there have been companies in the U.S. that have claimed things that have been proven false, and they've paid the price big time for
Yeah.
that. Those companies just don't exist anymore.
Or individuals. I mean, there was that whole debacle with
Oh yeah,
Kaiser and who
Tom
yeah,
Britton.
Tom Britton, which there are still people who don't know what happened, but it essentially blew up in Britton's face, and it wasn't the first time he's
Oh,
been
absolutely.
accused of essentially bringing in parts kits and selling them as custom knives. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and the sad thing is, I still see every once in a while you'll see a Tom Britton Tango pop up for sale for 400 some odd
yeah,
dollars, and they just sit and because it's like an unwritten, it's like on the wall, everybody knows it, it's not in the book but it's unwritten that everybody knows that. I mean, essentially the Tom Britton Tango is a Kaiser, which I don't know which model it is, but I mean, come on, you look at them and they're identical. The pivots, I mean, everything's identical. That's what
yeah.
happened. And the fact that he tried to, and it wouldn't be a huge deal if he said, "Oh, I got this manufactured from Kaiser. I did some hand
It's a
finishing on it."
mid-tech.
You know,
Boom.
it's a yeah, right. If you say, I sourced this from China, but I did some hand finishing, blah blah blah. But the fact that he went tried to say that it wasn't, it was something that it
Yeah,
wasn't.
and that they ripped him off
When
too.
yeah, when you're trying to get on all that, I mean, you really shot yourself in the foot
Yeah.
there. But yeah, so I think that if an American company tried to say that they were doing something that they weren't doing, I think that we've got the resources and they're close. It's so close to home that you can do the
Well,
research
what
to
about Quartermaster?
dig it down. Well, that is a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Well, but see, I think there has been some light shed on it.
Has there?
You know,
I mean,
I
it's as far as
oh
I followed, it's just a rabbit hole, and like there's a lot of like circumstantial evidence on both sides, but there's been nothing concrete shown from either Quartermaster or the conspiracy theorists. Although I did just buy one this week.
of course, yeah. Well, the quartermaster, I've completely stayed away from him for that
Yeah, I
reason.
have too.
Um, there's a couple of their designs that have kind of like called to me a little bit. The Mr. Roper, was that the most recent one before it's like the drop point and they did a Tanto.
Yeah, I think so. Mr. Rope something.
That one was kind of interesting, a little small, but that one was kind of interesting. But I have ultimately passed on him for that
Yeah.
reason. I don't, that and when they got the guy from Mantis Knives involved
Well,
with them.
that is the guy who from Quartermaster. That's the guy behind the company. Yeah.
Jared.
He was the son
Forget his last name.
the guy who invented, or I guess created, and I could be wrong on this, but generally, or the general details are that him and his father had Mantis knives, and then something went awry business-wise with Mantis between him and his father, and so then he went off and he started Quartermaster,
Yeah.
which is why some of the initial designs had a very Mantis feel to them, and and then there was the issues with what Walter Brand. He said they stole one of his designs and never paid him, but then they also did something with Grant and Gavin Hawk, and they've done a few more collaborations between now and then without really any more drama popping up. But anyways, I mean that's a rabbit hole, and I've stayed away from them too. But they did this flash sale on Instagram, and I was like, you know what? For $100, I might as well see like what these knives look like,
Yeah.
So.
Oh, what'd you end up picking up?
Oh,
What
I
was
don't.
it?
I don't even know. It's Let me see, what model was it?
Yeah, while you're looking, I saw the one that they had was it was the Austin Weiss.
Yeah,
Was
I
that the
want
one? Austin
that
Weiss
was the only
flipper?
one that I was like legitimately interested in because
It's an interesting looking
and it's a
design.
Warncliffe, and I've wanted like a
Yeah,
legit Warncliffe flipper for a long time now.
you should have got yourself a tilt.
Well, oh, that thing's big and it's too expensive
It
now.
is big. Have you ever had one?
No, I handled one.
Yeah, the tilt was a great knife. It was like the ZT before ZTs became, what they are now. But yeah, that was a good knife. That is actually a really big
Yeah.
knife. But the handle is really
Yeah,
big,
it
not the
looked
blade. It's
funky,
like,
and it was kind of funky in the hand and stuff, and so I definitely passed for the
yep,
price, but I certainly respect it for what it is, kind of in the history of the ZT
yep,
evolution. So
yeah. Yeah, back to the quartermaster thing. It's funny because I looked at that same Austin Weiss flipper, and I thought, that's a cool, interesting
Yeah.
design. But does that guy Austin Weiss, is he even a knife maker? I don't think he's even a knife designer. I think that is like a penned design from him, but I don't know that he actually makes. I don't think he does anything in the knife industry other than
No,
that,
I
does he?
think he's kind of big in the gun industry because I followed him on Instagram. Uh,
Yeah, I did
just
too.
because I liked the design and I was trying to figure out what was going on. But yeah, I think he's like a gun guy or something, and they just I guess he gave input on the design process for that knife. But yeah, I ended up ordering the QSE2, which it's a funky looking design, but again, I mean, they had flash sale for like $100, and so I'm like, you know what? I'm willing to risk $100 to kind of try it out, see kind of the fit and the finish and
Oh
quality.
yeah, yeah. That's the like crooked
Yeah,
one. It's like it doesn't go straight. It's like goes and like
yeah, it's a
hooks.
funky looking design.
Hundred
Yeah,
bucks. That's
yeah.
pretty
I mean,
good.
it's like what? It's like $185 on like retailers right
W-
now. So I
Yeah.
saw that it was
What
like
I
$100 plus like $5 shipping. So I was like, okay, I'm willing to risk that.
what I can't get over on these is the names because they don't just call them. It's like quartermaster, and first off, quartermaster isn't spelled quartermaster. It's like QTRM5TR, but then they call it's like QSC2, and then they call it Ricardo
Yeah.
Tubbs. So they have to have like two names for like every knife they have has two names. I've never understood
I
that.
guess when your people in the boardroom get bored, it's like, well, what should we call this? What should we nickname it? I mean,
Yeah,
at larger companies, they would laugh you out of the room. So,
yeah, that's
anyways,
funny.
yeah. So, as far again, going back to the Chinese manufacturing, as far as holding companies accountable, again, been one of those companies where, and again, I don't really care if they make it in China. Again, I have no qualms with that, but I think, if they do and then they lie to consumers, that's an issue. I think that's what most people's issue is. It's like, look, the prices are good, the materials look good. If the fit and finish is good, then, big freaking deal, but just don't lie to the consumers about it.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
and anyways, I mean, there's just been no concrete evidence on either side. I just haven't really ever been able to formulate like what I consider a factual opinion.
Yeah, yeah. I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, I haven't done the same thing with them either. Um, and that's one of the so the whole value thing. Just getting back to value on Chinese knives. You know, ZT is seriously, in my opinion, closing the gap in those designs because you've got these Chinese knives that are mostly going for like the $200 mark, and now they're creeping up and up in price. And you've got the Horizon
Yeah.
D, right? Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that's going to be what, over three hundred
400.
dollars. Yeah. So you're looking at $400.
Yeah.
It. I mean, it's a nice looking knife. I saw the carbon fiber
Hmm.
one. Jim Skelton like blew his Instagram up
Yeah.
with it. But it looks really nice. It looks really attractive. But man, $400, that's a bit steep.
It, you know, it is, and I'm not going to tell people like I'm never value with the knives like in my reviews. I never come out and say that, or I try not to come out and say that like this knife costs this much and it is absolutely worth it or it's not worth it.
Right.
Because everyone has different kind of thresholds or different value equations as far as what they make and what they value. And it's more like their prices jumped pretty significantly to this model, and there isn't, value-wise, there isn't really a lot of difference between this and the Horizon A, which again I bought for 320, and then I put another $80
Right.
of mods into, so I've got 400 into each knife. So I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, I like the knives. I'm really happy with them for 400 bucks. Like I have no qualms, no regrets about paying that what I did. But for people who bought one, when they came over here and they were 250, and it's like, okay, I bought this knife for 250, it rocks, and now the next model that has essentially the same materials aside from the cool anodizing on the titanium is an extra
Hmm.
150 bucks. Like I get that they're not thrilled, you know. No one
Right.
really likes prices to go up, and I like to save money whenever I can to get the things that I want.
Right.
But again, I mean, it depends what we compare it to. I mean, so like the Horizon D, it's supposed to be a kind of a premier line, limited edition type of thing. Like Fort Henry knives only got 5 of the full tie and 5 of the carbon fiber, and that's it.
Right.
And so I don't
Wow.
know how many he's going to produce, but it seems like it's going to be a fairly small number. So if we look at the materials, M390, full tie or tie and carbon fiber, polished titanium backspacer that's been anodized, titanium hardware, titanium pivot collars, titanium pocket clip, all 3D machined, the works plus the cool anodizing that's like a faux Timascus. I mean, if we were to compare that again to a US company like ZT, because they're the most equivalent example,
Right.
$400. I mean, you'd have people paying that all day long, and then turn around and selling them for 6 to 7 to 800.
Yeah,
And that's been the
absolutely.
equation with all the limited editions. But because people have the mindset that, hey, China means value or cheap, they're not quite happy with it. Even those who have been Riate fans thus far, like on some of the forum threads, they're going and they're like, well, this fake Timascus is stupid. I don't like it. They shouldn't have done it. When the real issue is they're unhappy that the price has increased. And
Right. Yeah. If that same knife was 290 or
oh,
three
they'd
hundred
sing its
dollars, they'd be fine
praises.
with
They
it.
would
Yeah.
sing it to bed at night. They'd give it
Yep.
kisses, but because it is that $100 more. It's like, this is stupid and I hate it. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
I could be wrong. I mean, that's really the impression that I'm getting, but it just seems like people are more price conscious than they really want to admit, and so they attack an element instead
Yeah.
of
There's
just walking away.
there's probably some there's probably some pride there. Uh, knife collecting, I think, is a similar thing, and it's not just knives, but when you talk about high end,
Anything.
you know anything, yeah, you're talking watches, flashlights,
Electronics.
electronics. There's so much pride in it. These things become they stop being about what they are in their fundamental level and start being status
Hmm.
symbols. Pocket jewelry, what some people call them, and that's true. And when that stuff becomes the case, then there's a little bit of pride attached to it. You want to have the nice thing. You want to show off a
Yeah.
little bit. So that's just what it
No,
is.
absolutely. But again, it's a great knife. I get people unhappy about the price going up, and it'll be interesting to see what Kaiser does this next year, because they have a lot of they just did the collaborations with Matt Kuchar, which were pretty awesome, based on
Yes.
his custom models that people have wanted for years and years and years.
Yeah. Yeah, I can tell you, I've looked at some of those, the Kaiser, the Flashbang, and the
Mhm.
Dorado, the Kaiser ones, and I mean, damn, they look spot on. I mean, they look like they nailed those designs, and I've heard nothing but good
Yeah.
things about their manufacturing as well. I've been thinking about getting one of those flashbangs because they look really nice, and the Dorados look awesome as
Yeah,
well.
especially with the skull carving on there that's been anodized. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just not something that any other production company has done thus far in the United States, where they took the time to CNC all of that on there. And then there's a lot of hand finishing that happens on the Dorado and the Flashbang too, to get those nice rounded edges. Um,
Yep.
those aren't machine capable. That has to be done by hand on a belt essentially. So, and then
Yeah.
they did it all for $200, which people were really happy with them. I mean, I was shocked at the quality for the price and the features and
Yeah.
the attention to detail and the handwork. I mean, I was absolutely shocked. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do this next year as they incorporate more features, and I think they're going to really push the envelope and try to do some things that are really going to create or drive value, even if they do increase the prices a little bit. But again, I think people are extremely price conscious or price sensitive, more
Yeah.
so than they want to admit. So,
Yeah, and I'll fully admit it. I am the $200 range. The mark is just about where I top out at on something
hmm
like that. On something that I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. You know, purchase
yeah,
purchase wise. A lot of times I'll trade into stuff that's higher end, knowing that I didn't necessarily have to foot the cash
hmm
for it. So a lot of times if I'm going out on a limb, it's on a trade. I usually won't spend money on something that's completely
yeah,
unknown to me. Take for example the
yeah,
Shirogorov. I didn't buy it, but I wanted to experience one. I wanted to see what the fuss was about. Would it live up to all the praise and all the hype it gets? Um, so I said, well, I got offered it in a trade and went ahead with it. And I've been pretty impressed with it. So,
Awesome.
so, but yeah, as far as like, barrier of entry, that $200 mark is exactly where I kind of fall out
Hmm.
at, because that's something that I can kind of devote to it without too much thought, not too much concern. Once you start getting up into the threes and into the fours, I'd like to have something to go off of, some kind of, idea, and it has to also speak to
Hmm.
me more so than just like, hey, this is kind of
Yeah.
neat,
And again,
you
that
know.
that $400 for the Horizon D that I picked up. I mean, a couple years ago, I wouldn't have ever fathomed dropping $400 on a knife,
Yeah.
and then let alone a Chinese produced knife. But, based on I've had every single Riate knife thus far, at
Yeah.
least one iteration of it, like the A, not the B, and the District A, not the District B. But, I mean, I have a relationship with the brand. I know what I'm expecting.
Hmm.
And so I had really no qualms about dropping that $400 because I've been very happy with every knife thus far. Now, if it was a brand new
Yeah.
company, like I've never, Carson, we haven't really talked about them yet, but they're a really interesting brand because they're out of China.
Hmm.
I don't even know a lot about the brand. There's just not a lot of info out there, but they do really interesting, really innovative features. They use really good materials, but those are like $700 new, direct from Carson.
Yeah.
And I have no
The,
relationship with them. I understand some of the unique features, some of the unique designs, but 600 or $700 with that company, I mean, I might trade into one at some point, I suppose, but I'm not going to buy one new. Definitely not paying that price for it.
yeah. And if you go to their website, even their website doesn't have a whole lot of information on
Hmm.
it. Um, they've got some, like you said, they've got some interesting knives, but they're like, I don't know, they remind me a lot of like some of the Warren Thomas stuff,
Mm,
because they're very, very like, just, I don't know, I almost feel like with those, it's like they've been designed to death.
yeah.
Like they've been they add a flipper tab that, does this, or a, attachable, glass breaker, and like, it's all carved out of one, piece, and like,
Or a lock with a
that to me is
safety or
like,
something, that pulls
yeah,
down.
it's just a lot of weird random. I mean, it's unique. It's definitely different, which different can sell. Different can be
Yeah.
good. But for me, those ones have always I've kind of scratched my head at those as well. Looks like they've got some pens too, some pretty interesting looking titanium
Oh,
pens.
do they? Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't even, I don't know. That's a brand that I would certainly like to learn more about. But, the
Yeah.
exploratory process price wise is going to be so ridiculously expensive, to,
Yeah.
and I see them go up on the forums every now and again, but they're still like $400, and I'm just like, you know, like I don't, even at
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
discounted price, I'm still hesitant to jump in there just because I don't know. And I don't really know what my barrier is that with that one compared to, like Riate or Kaiser. Maybe it was the fact that those ones all started off in the, well, kind of more affordable range, they have
Hmm.
$200 models where people got in and they're like, "Oh, this quality is exceptional. I really like this and this and this about the knife." Now I'm willing to buy one of the more expensive ones. I mean, I don't think Carson has any what would be considered kind of budget entry for people to develop that relationship. It's just like, "Oh, here's a $600 knife, and yeah, you should buy
Yeah.
it."
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of makes you wonder about their marketing. Their the way they attack the market, because to me that's kind of silly. I mean, to expect somebody to spend that much money on something that is unproven and untested. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe we just
I
don't
have no
know. I
idea,
don't know.
and I haven't seen any
But
marketing
I'm
from
with
them
you on
ever.
it.
Like
No.
I just hear
Every
about them in
like
passing, or I've seen one or two video
yeah,
on them, but that's it. So I don't know. They're just kind of this enigma out there, and for some people that would be exciting, but I don't know.
maybe.
I think I want to learn more about them now that I'm talking about them, and I'm still in the dark.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So,
hear you. Um, so yeah, I want to kind of circle back to the Russian stuff
mm,
for a minute. Um, you know, so I mean, what makes, so like Sheargorovs, for example, what makes those so much more expensive and sought after? We talk about, machining and, all that. You've got these Russian knives. I mean, I remember when Sheargorovs first got released on True North Knives, they were about $500, give or take. And I remember thinking that the designs were really interesting. I mean, essentially, like the 95, I remember almost looking the same as it did back then. I mean, they had some similar models, but I was like, well, these are really interesting, and the price is not that bad. And I kind of honestly, I think around that time, I kind of dropped out and stopped paying attention as much to the knife market. And once I kind of got back into it, these things were double the price, and I was like, what the hell?
Hmm.
Um, you know, so my kind of question is, you've got a product that's going for $500 one day and then $1,000 the next day. People are paying it, but do we really know what's going on at the Shirogorov factory? Do we know where the parts are coming from? Do we know, where the how the machining's being done? I don't personally know. I'm sure the answer might be out there, but I can tell you that the machining is the best, certainly the best machining I've seen on a knife. On this Tebargan, I think is how you say it. It's got the best machining of any knife that I've handled, and the only knife that comes close was that Deboya. And it's just strange to me because no matter how nice the ZTs are, you can always see some variation. The edge might not be quite exactly the same. The grind on one side is always different than the other, and things like that. Spyderco's the same thing. Even their Taichung models, I've had a few of those come through, and the grinds aren't quite equal. But on the Shirogorov, everything is perfectly symmetrical, which of course has to be done by a machine because no hand is going to be able to get to those tolerances, but the tolerances are so tight, and it just reminds me a lot of that Deboya. But I wonder, if we're paying $1,000 for this Russian manufactured knife, where are those parts being machined? Certainly the finishing is coming from them, but how much of the actual manufacturing is done by them, and is it worth $1,000? That's a lot of money for a pocket
Yeah,
knife.
and it's interesting too because China and Russia aren't that far away, and so people are always concerned about it costs this much. What's the warranty process going to look like? Am I going to be able to get it serviced? Am I going to have to ship it? But no one really bitches about the Shirogorovs. It's like, hey,
Right.
shipping to Russia is no joke, and it's still going to take a while, even if you go with the more expensive service. Now, the knives that I've received from like Custom Knife Factory, they've all gotten here no problem whatsoever. So. I mean, and I haven't really, and the knives I've ordered from China have gotten here too without any problem. Nothing's
Yeah.
been lost, but it's interesting that you bring that up, that it's like, hey, people like to say this and that about China, but the Shirogorovs are kind of held in a holy grail status with all these potential barriers are just gone, you know,
Right.
and
Not even gone, blown out of the
yeah,
water. You're talking about a price barrier on a Chinese knife of $250, $300, but these things are
yeah,
$1,000.
and
You know what I
and those
mean?
are all secondary markup. I mean, I don't even know what the real price looks like, and I'm not sure that a lot of people do because the specific distributors who bring them in. I mean, we don't know what their prices look like. They're definitely not going to share that. And then everyone else who's cashing in, like individuals who will buy Shirogorovs in Russia and then ship them over to the U.S., they're putting it at the same
Right.
price they're all at here. So I mean, I have no idea what the direct price even looks like.
That's very true. And if you remember, when Shirogorov came to one of the knife shows, I don't know what knife show it
Hmm.
was. I mean, their prices were essentially almost higher than what they were
Yeah,
asking.
dealer prices.
Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, they were asking $1,000. I think the cheapest knife on the table is $1,000, which is exactly what you'd go. If you go to From Russia with Knives and go to Shirogorov, you know, essentially their cheapest knife is pretty much
Yeah.
$1,000. I think they got one or two in like the $800 range. But like this, I wish I'm gonna learn how to pronounce this at some point. Tabargan. Anyway, um, it's carbon fiber Vanex 35, but it's an axis lock with washers, but brand new from Shirogorov. It's $1,000. Now, granted, I just traded a couple knives for it, but $1,000. I mean, 1G
Yeah.
straight up. Um, I have a hard time believing that these knives are as popular as they are at this price point. And I've seen over the course of time, we're kind of getting into a different conversation, but over the course of time, of the last few years, the knife industry and the knife market has been creeping up and up and up and up. And I think that's why and circling back to our main topic, I think that's why the Chinese manufactured knife has become so popular because if you look at companies like Spyderco, you know, and even Benchmade to a certain extent. Those used to be the knives in that price
Hmm.
range. I think the $150 knife today is now like the $150 to $200 knife, but those companies have essentially abandoned that space, that category. All of Spyderco's new offerings, maybe got a couple that fall into that range, but all their really interesting stuff is way outside of that.
Yeah. Or
And
yeah, I mean, or if you look at like some of the new stuff that's coming out, like the G10 VG10 combinations from Japan, those are like 150 to $200, and if I take 200
right,
bucks, I can get a freaking Deboya, which is like titanium frame lock, flipper, bearings, all this other stuff, or I can get like a VG10, G10, you know, kind of
backlog.
so-so liner lock, knife from Spyderco. So it's like, well, I know where I'm going to put my money. I mean, it's not that there's anything wrong with those knives from Spyderco, but there's nothing that's exciting, especially for the price point where, I can get a Riate Hills for that price, or
Yeah,
the
yeah.
the Deboya. I mean, any number of knives that are produced in China that are much more exciting and make me happier potentially. So,
Right, right. Well, and that excitement factor, that's where the enthusiast market
yeah.
is. We don't want black G10 and VG10 knives with a weird grind. That alone is not going to sell the
No.
knife. And I've seen it time and time again. Spyderco continues to introduce these knives, these VG10, G10, made in Japan backlocks, and they introduce them and they discontinue them, and they introduce them and they discontinue them. It's obvious they're not selling, so why do they keep doing it?
Maybe it sells enough that it's still profitable for them. I mean,
Maybe.
like the Turzula StarMade or that Turzula with the weird, compound
Ugh.
grind, or even like the Battle Station or any of those other ones, like, it just
And
didn't do it for me.
yeah, me either. And I think that Spyderco, a lot has been kind of recently they've been really just throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. I feel like that's kind of what they're doing. If you notice, the number of knives that they release is a lot higher, but the number of knives that are truly, you know, timeless and the ones that you think are going to last are much fewer. And I think they really just are kind of throwing whatever at the
Yeah.
wall. But I think Spyderco's approach, say compare him to ZT, is much different.
Oh,
Zero Tolerance does, collaborations, and they really work with their designers to come up with a unique knife to bring to market. Where Spyderco, I think, essentially just takes a custom maker's knife and designs it, or not designs it,
hmm,
manufactures it. If you look at the production versions of some of their customs that they make, they're spot on. I mean, there's nothing that's different.
yeah.
And I think that a lot of what Spyderco does just comes from that. It's like they have no design input. If it's not designed by Eric or Sal, I don't think they really have much input in terms of design.
No, they don't. And that's not a bad approach necessarily. I mean, I think there's
No,
something that's really wonderful about that approach. Because then, when you go and you buy that knife, and I think this kind of applies only to their Taichung offerings, but you're basically getting
right?
the same exact knife. It's just made by an excellent production facility in Taichung instead of the maker. So it's
Yeah.
interesting though, and speaking of overseas made knives, I mean we know that the Peter Recenti Nirvana is going to potentially be it's going to be the most expensive Spyderco produced thus far. It's also going to be one of
Yep.
the most expensive overseas production knives ever sold in the U.S.
I don't doubt that at
So,
all.
but I want one.
As soon as that came out, I had two thoughts. I had, holy crap, I want one, and holy crap, this thing's gonna cost a fortune.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's gonna be $500 easy.
Oh my gosh.
I think it is. I really think it's gonna be $500.
Oh man, if it's 500 even, I'm going to be like,
I'm telling you, man. They charged you $300 for the
yeah,
Rubicon.
the Rubicon's awesome though.
This thing, well, it is. I mean, well, that's the thing. The quality's good, and I don't think that I'm not knocking the Nirvana. I think it's going to be fantastic. I think the execution will be on point. Everything will be great with it. But the damn thing's going to be $500. If not $500, it's going to be in like the mid to upper 450s. They might try and get it under 500, but dude, I think that thing's going to be
I think
up
it's going to be
there.
less than 450 because the thing that made the Rubicon so expensive is that 3D machined carbon fiber, and the quality of carbon fiber plus the 3D machining, the way that they did it is quite expensive. It's a very long machine time
Yeah,
process, and well, okay, I take that back because the Nirvana isn't an integral, and it is on bearings, and the integral
yeah,
machining is potentially going to be more time consuming than the 3D machining. I just hope it's under
yeah. And if you look,
450. We'll see.
we'll
Yeah.
see. Time will tell. But they've got a couple other ones that are like that, like the tie stick. Is one that's
Yeah.
really heavily machined, which the whole ruins that knife. I'm just gonna say
Yeah,
it.
I don't like the design altogether. Like
Yeah,
I like Brian Tye's knives, kind of. I had a tirade and it felt dainty. It was so and the lock, the button lock had some very bad stick.
yeah,
But I like the design aesthetic. I think it's absolutely beautiful, but they could have done a much better design. I mean, that knife is it almost looks unusable in the
yeah,
size and then that huge upswept blade. I mean,
yeah, yeah. And I don't want to get
yeah,
carried
let's
away
not.
with talking about Spider Coat knife because we could probably go on and on and on about it. Um, but yeah, so I see the Chinese knife market. I think it's a good thing that we've got designs coming at affordable prices. The problem comes, just to kind of come back around and summarize. The problem comes when the price is no longer a selling point, and when that happens, can the knife survive? Can it hold on its own? And I think that companies like Kaiser and Riate are doing the right things. They're partnering in Kaiser's case, they're partnering with the right people to get unique designs that are sought after in the hands of people at a more affordable price. In terms of Riate, they're trying to do things different. They're bringing their own
Hmm.
take, and I think that's what's going to kind of keep them in the business. Some of the other guys that are just like Carson Lab stuff that are just throwing stuff out there and just putting prices up. I don't think those guys are going to be around. I think that the companies like Kaiser and Riate really have a better understanding of where the market's going and what their place in it is going to be.
Yeah. And I think another value, hopefully, I'm not sure that it's working right now, is when you have overseas manufacturing that make equally good knives that should keep prices in line for everyone. I mean, again, you increase the number of
Yeah,
options in the market, then the prices stabilize. You only have one or two people making it. They can do whatever they want with the prices, but the prices are still creeping up on just about everything. Maybe if there weren't overseas manufacturing that were competing, the prices would be different. I mean that's kind of one of my, secondary hopes is that it keeps things kind of in line or from getting too crazy, but time will tell, I suppose.
yeah, yeah, and that's a great point. And look at what ZT released this last round. These early 2015
Hmm.
offerings. The most expensive one was 220 for the 0452 CF,
Hmm.
right? So, prior to that, and not to say that they're abandoning, the M390 stuff that's, even those are only 240,
Yeah.
which really is a scream. I mean, honestly, I think that company is, I would be willing to bet that ZT's positioning themselves to sell more ZTs, by lowering that price point, switching to S35 and competing against these guys and saying, look, we're not going to back down. We're not going to, price ourselves out of the market. We're going to provide these great designs at affordable prices. And I think they're the company really to beat. And the last few years have been all them.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, they just keep taking up more of the market segment. They keep essentially taking sales from Spyderco and especially from Benchmade. So, um, there are probably a lot of people who are one time were Benchmade fanboys and they've shifted over to ZT because ZT listens to the consumer way more than Benchmade does, way more.
I don't think Benchmade. I don't. Not only do they not listen, I think they purposefully ignore the knife market. Like I I used to like Benchmade. Benchmade. I mean, when I first started collecting, it was Benchmades were like the shit,
Yeah.
and now they're just kind of shit.
Yeah. They've
Like,
gotten too caught up in, hey, we've got the secret sauce, which they think is the Axis lock, and people are just going to keep coming and buying it because it's the best there is. And, it's, yeah, I mean, even some of their newer offerings, it's like, hey, we're just playing the favorites again, you know.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is this year, um, I see some serious shit for Benchmade. Um, the patent on the Axis lock ran out this
Oh,
year.
did it finally?
Yep. So they came out. If you looked at their new stuff, they came out with one called the ambidextrous push button, so APB I think lock,
Hmm.
and it's a push button lock that operates from both
Yeah.
sides. Oh, obviously overcomplicated, over-engineered. Well, I won't say over-engineered, but it's kind of an overly complicated. I've played with it. It works, but the Axis lock is a better lock than that. And I think that they're just trying to come out with something new to hold on to that market. And I wouldn't be surprised to see other companies taking that Axis lock and running it. I don't think any big company is going to do it. I don't think you'll see a Spyderco Axis lock because those guys,
Hmm.
they always give credit where credit's due, and I don't think they do that. There's a lot of bad blood between those two
And
companies
they've got the
anyway.
bolt lock as well, and SOG has their
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
lock, and uh,
But I would see companies, U.S. companies, producing an Axis lock knife because they can. Now that the patent is gone, there's nothing to stop anybody else from going out and manufacturing those knives. So, well, it'd be interesting to see where Benchmade adapts to. Um, like that new one that they came out with. I forget the model number, 730 or something like that. But it's that M390 frame lock one, like the machine
oh,
one that was
the
like 300 and
Cyber
some odd dollars.
collaboration.
No, no, no.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about. Yeah,
They're really
yeah,
expensive.
yeah. It's like 7.6 something or whatever.
Yeah. Well, that thing was, man, this thing's like over $300, and I'm like, why? And I went to I've got a local shop about 40 minutes away that actually has a good decent stock, and they've got a long history with
Hmm.
Benchmade. And even them, I mean, they've been in the business for years and years and years and years, and they're like, yeah, I don't know what Benchmade's doing this thing. Like I even look when I talk to them, usually they'll pull a knife out and let me handle it. They didn't even bother with that one because they knew that it was just not unsellable, but I mean, how many people do you see carrying those things?
No, and there were a lot of issues with that knife when it was released, as far as like I think being able to open it or blade centering. I mean, I heard it.
Right.
I didn't follow it too much because the knife didn't really interest me. It's the 761. I finally
Yep.
looked up the
Yep.
model number, but yeah, the knife just didn't really do it for me. The tip down carry, like, are you kidding me? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Only. Well, they've done that for years on their liner locks and their frame locks. They do tip down. And how many customers do you have to have write to you and say, I don't want tip down, I want tip up, or at least the option to do it, and they refuse to do it.
yeah.
It's the silliest thing.
It's funny. It's
But
like this knife's 330 with M390,
yep.
excellent steel. I had such little interest in this one that I actually ended up picking up the Custom Knife Factory Garza, which was 390, which has S35 V in steel, but it's stainless steel lock insert. It's got the tip up pocket clip, and they have fairly similar lines, but I had more interest in a more expensive knife with a lesser steel because at least they had features that I wanted, because they
And
give a
and
damn.
not only features, right, they give a damn. That's the thing. It's like you look at that knife and you know that they cared about
Yeah.
it, right? They put the features in they knew that the customers wanted. That Benchmade is a cold, lifeless design. It's a manufactured design that gives me nothing. It doesn't give me any feels at
Yeah.
all. I look at it and I just think someone just drew this up and go, just make that. Like there's nothing there. There's no
Yeah.
soul there.
And I don't think it's not attributed to any one specific designer either, which if it was, it would have had a little bit more character to it. So,
Right.
but yeah, again, with the Chinese manufacturing, I hope that they put the pressure on some of these companies. It's, I don't even really give a damn about Benchmade anymore, like with their map pricing
No.
and their bland designs and their all that other stuff. Like I really don't care anymore. I mean, they'd really have to do something exciting to gain my interest again. But, for other companies like, Spyderco, ZT, some of the other big ones, it's like, hey, it's competition, and I'm not going to say that they're going to put these other companies out of business. I don't think that they will. In fact, I think there's zero chance. But it's saying,
Right.
hey, there's other groups that are listening to the same consumers that you have, and potentially they're listening better, or potentially they're creating better value, and so over time, I'm not going to say that like ZT or Bench or Spyderco is going to have like knee-jerk reactions and create something really cheap with all these fun features soon. But over time, over a 5 or 10 year period, that's going to affect the way that they do business. There's no question.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I would even argue that it's affecting them today. If you look at ZT's offerings of more of like a kind of a blank canvas. Their markings on they've started manufacturing their knives with on one side is almost completely clean, and I think that's in a response to the kind of blank canvas of some of these not just the Chinese manufactured knives. So some of the mid techs that come out are kind of blank canvases, and I think they're catering to that market.
Yeah, and
so.
That's certainly I think what their consumers have been asking for too. So I think again they do a fairly good job of listening when people are like, "Hey, too many markings, too many ZTs," and they're like, "Okay, we'll tone it down a little bit."
Yeah.
So
yeah, ZT. I mean, when you've got the director of sales on the forum on a daily basis,
Saturdays.
hourly basis, I'm not sure he does a whole lot of work. Thomas spends an awful lot of time on the forum. That's all I'm saying.
And he doesn't even like forums.
I don't doubt that he doesn't. But yeah. So all right. Well, I think we've kind of exhausted this topic for today.
Yeah, I mean it's always going to be a continual topic as we talk about any specific company with competition is competition. So.
Yep. Hey, and competition is good for the consumer.
Absolutely.
All right, so we'll wrap it up with the knife challenge. So we already talked a little bit about the gear challenge. Sorry, gear challenge. We already talked a little bit about it, but we'll kind of go into it. So last week's challenge, so to speak, was the cheap knife challenge, which is carry the cheapest knife that you own, go through your drawer, find the cheapest knife that you own, carry it for a week. You guys are free. Anybody's free to take on that. Me and Austin actually already did it. And I can tell you that I learned a lot about myself for the 3 days that I actually did partake in the challenge. And that is mostly that I like knives for more than just cutting, because I like to play with them. And playing with an FRN handle backlock is not fun. It's almost dangerous. So so I will fully admit that a lot of my attraction to high-end knives is as pocket jewelry. I flip them out for fun. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Cutting-wise, honestly, AOS 8 cuts through material with the same amount of ease if you sharpen it correctly as any other steel on the market. I had no problems with that. The Bob Dozier K-Bar Folding Hunter is a great budget knife. I'd probably, that'd probably be a really good knife for, a first time, say if you're buying a knife for your son or daughter, for the first time. I think that would make a great knife. It's not too big, it's not intimidating, and it honestly is a really good high quality knife. But man, carrying one knife like that I can't really play with for 3 days was pretty tough. So that was my experience. How about you?
Well, I persevered through at least 5 days the work week. I didn't do all 7. And I liked the knife that I carried. I had the Kershaw Emerson collaboration, the CQC 7K, which is a Chinese produced knife that Kershaw produced overseas to really bring in at a good price point. But it's a great knife. I never did a review of that knife because I felt there were quite a few of them out there already. But man, the quality, the function, the smoothness, the lockup, the sharpness, the blade grind. I mean, everything is exceptionally well done, especially for the price on that little knife. Uses the 8CR13 MOV, but I really like the knife. But I like variation. I like to experience different things, and some days I wake up and I'm like, I really want to carry that knife today. And sometimes, not very often, maybe I'll switch up midday because I'm like, ooh, I really want to carry that one now. And I really enjoy that side of essentially gear and EDC type stuff. It's like, hey, I get to mix it up today. I get to do something exciting. I don't know how many thousands of combinations I have between all of my watches, knives, pens, tens and tens of thousands of potential combinations. So anyways, So I mean that was really the only thing with me is like I don't like carrying the same knife every single day, even if it is, like one of my custom handmade knives. Sometimes I just want to switch it up, and maybe I want to go from a custom handmade down to a production knife, an inexpensive production knife.
Yeah.
But I like the variability is essentially what I really discovered to almost a painful degree, even though I love the knife I was carrying. So.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I'm with you on that one, man. It's funny because I was actually looking on. Do you ever go on Massdrop?
No, I don't know if I should or if that would just be another thing. Okay,
Don't. But they had a group buy. I think it was the 7K and the 6K were on there. I'm looking at it now to see if it's still there, and I don't think it is. But they were really cheap.
Yeah, I mean, even like if you buy it from a dealer right now, they're like what, 25, like $30?
Yeah, I think it was something like that.
Oh my gosh, such a good knife.
Yeah, you don't go to Massdrop. It's not good because this website literally has everything from, and just so anybody knows, we don't have any sponsorships, at least not yet.
Don't be shy though.
Massdrop has like,
if you want to sponsor.
Yeah, seriously, give us a call. This website literally has everything that you're interested in. It has it. I would gander to say it has anything that you're interested in. It's probably got something that you want. They've got the tie bolt.
Do they?
Let's see. They got a Seiko.
You can't buy the damn tie bolt.
They got a Seiko. They've got
really?
them on there.
What
Yep.
the hell?
They've got a Seiko 5 Sport SKZ watch. It looks kind of interesting. It's a little bulky. Ooh, they got a Maritac SR1, which looks really nice.
I do like Maritacs.
Yeah. See, this is a bad website.
Yeah.
Anyway, getting way off topic. But okay, so gear challenge. So last week was the knife challenge. This week we're gonna do something a little bit different. And I mentioned that during my EDC, I carry a pen like sporadically. So the gear challenge for this week is going to be to carry a pen. Now, you don't have to necessarily carry paper with you, but carry a pen with you every day. See how much you use it, see if it's important. I know there's a lot of times during my week where someone will ask me, for a pen or ask me to sign something and they don't have a pen and I happen to not have mine. So I'm going to dedicate myself this week to carrying a pen. It'll probably be the Sharpie pen. Now, I have some fountain pens that I really like, and I use them for work because fountain pens are much easier on your hand once you learn how to write with them. But the Sharpie pen writes on just about anything. It's smooth, it's sturdy. I have the stainless steel one, so it's not going to get beat up. And again, it writes on everything, so I know I'm not going to have to worry about it. So that's the gear challenge. You got anything in mind for yours?
I mean, I typically carry a pen every day too. I've got 5 different pens, so I'll definitely have one with me. But I am interested in a fountain pen, so but anyways, we'll probably do that as a later challenge. But yeah, I'll have a pen on me for sure.
Yeah. Sounds good. So we'll carry them and report on our experiences next week. So that's it for the podcast. You can find me again at my website is the Modern Neanderthal. It's modneanderthal.com. You can also find me at the Modern Neanderthal on Instagram and all the forums, and you can email me at themodernneanderthal@gmail.com. And Austin, you're on YouTube.
Yeah,
mostly?
YouTube and Instagram, just Epic Snuggle Bunny. So yeah, not too hard to find.
All right, well, that's going to be it for this week. Thanks for tuning in if you stayed all the way to the end, and we'll see you next time. And Austin, hang on for a second, and we'll chat
Sounds
afterwards.
good.